All right, here we are. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Between Two Teachers, where two teachers talk about education um, in our local area and statewide and nationally, sometimes internationally. We talk about best practices, things that are happening that everyone should know about, need to know about, and what critical issues are there that we need to discuss, and we give you our opinion, about those things. So my name is Consuelo Lara.
My name is Madeline Cronenberg. And as always, we're going to begin with our two recognitions. And the first one is the labor and body recognition. I acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. I remember that Black and brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. I also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today, of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples, in the building of what we refer to as the United States. And that, again, is written by Dr. Rochelle Rogers Ard and is offered at the beginning of every board meeting of West Contra Costa Unified. And it's an important acknowledgement to set the tone for the work that we do in a board meeting and regarding education. And the other acknowledgement that we offer here at Between Two Teachers and have for some time is our land acknowledgement. And that is this. We pause to acknowledge that we have gathered on the ancestral territory of Huichin, part of the unceded land of the Chochenyo and Karkan-speaking Muwekma Ohlone people. We remember their continued connection to this region and give thanks to them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland. We offer our respect to their elders and all Ohlone people of the past and present. And we recommend to you that you continue to follow the efforts of the Muwekma people to become nationally recognized by the federal government so that they receive the benefits of being recognized as a tribe. And you can do that by Googling Justice for Muwekma, and you'll find there the status of that effort. And we also point you to two sets of curriculum with respect to particularly the Ohlone people. And one is on the East Bay Regional Park District website. And the other is on the Contra Costa County Office of Education website.
Yes, there is a link on our front page that on About CCCOE, and you can scroll down and it says land acknowledgement, and it takes you through the process of how to do that. So there's a lot of resources out there, and I'm so glad to see more and more people doing this. I even saw it at before a movie started, they did a land acknowledgement. So
it's important, and but we also need to have the labor acknowledgement now start to be adopted, and that's something that I think more people need to put on their agenda. Right, that's really an important thing, and I really do highlight West Contra Costa for doing that. I think because they have decided that they're an anti-racist organization, and that's really what you have to be. You need to just, in order to change something, you can't just say, oh, well, we'll just stop what you're doing. You got to look at what you need to change in what you're doing, and that takes work, right? I do want to point out the lessons on and learning plans on social justice, and I've got a link to that on our Facebook page. And then if you just go to the Southern Poverty Law Center Learning for Justice website, you'll find all of that, and that's really important material for teaching about justice. And so We also want to suggest that you like us and join us and subscribe. We love to have you come here every week and hear what we've got to say. We've been going on. This is number 226 of Between Two Teachers. So we've got a good record of showing up, right? We'll talk about showing up later, but showing up is we've been showing up for quite a while here doing this.
Yes.
Nationally, I just want to point out a couple of things nationally. Two different people who have gotten some publicity this week in education. And one of them is a young 38-year-old state superintendent of schools. And I had thought that our superintendent was young for being a superintendent of schools, but he's not 38. So this young man is younger. But his name is Ryan. His name Ryan Walters. Got my phone going. Anyway, Ryan Walters is the state superintendent of schools for Oklahoma.
Okay.
Mr. Walters has decided that Mr. Walters is in a red state and he is a very conservative man. And Mr. Walters has decided to take it upon himself to bring Catholic schools into the voucher program.
Okay.
Right. And these would not be like Catholic schools that you sit out while they're teaching religion. This is not what this is. This is a Catholic school, right? This is a religious school. He feels that that's an important, that he doesn't see any reason that there should be a separation of church and state. And that really is his conclusion from recent Supreme Court decisions. So he is leading the charge. Oklahoma will be the first state to completely include religious schools in their voucher programs.
Wow. Wow.
It's an interesting thing. Milwaukee did it somewhat, but Superintendent Walters is taking it on for the whole state, not just one small city and not under some other circumstances. So there's that. And then there's another superintendent, education secretary. And her name is Zoe Saunders. Zoe Saunders. She has been chosen by the governor of Vermont. And her expertise is being a strategist for a charter organization.
All right. Of course.
Now, the thing is, there are no charter schools in Vermont.
So what is she doing?
She's going to bring them.
Oh my gosh.
So here is what happened with Miss Sanders, she's a young woman. She was put forward to the legislature in Vermont. They voted against her. So she did not get appointed by them. However, the governor appointed her anyway as interim. So she's there.
She is there. And she wants to bring charter schools to Vermont.
Vermont, a state that is left that has no charter schools. Right. And then, so, I mean, it's just the directions that organizations, this is, the direction education is going. And we just need to know nationally, there is a real push here. There's pockets, but there is a real push for more conservative and for charter schools, which are not even conservative. They are a different business model.
Yeah.
We know they are.
Yeah. And one of the things that all of these things teach us, these are like cautionary tales. And people think that can't happen here in California, or it absolutely could easily. We've got some real pockets of that happening in parts of California.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's why we are always talking about call to action and more people be involved who are not, those individuals seem to be louder and have more money. So we all need to be more involved in, what's happening locally, of course, and what's happening in our public schools, because it's under attack every day.
It really is. It
And
really is. I mean, and even the third one I wanted to mention is just there's a group called Families on the New Frontier. This is a report, Families on the New Frontier, and it's put out by the Rewired group. And it's called Mapping and Meeting the Growing Demand for Unconventional Schooling.
Hmm.
Right? It's a big report that was put out in January. And essentially it talks about some of it is virtual schools, right? I mean, obviously it's not traditional district schools. It's another strategy to make money by repackaging education in another way. And some of it is going to be virtual, basically virtual charter schools, because what they're trying to do is get the money from the community members, right? And so that what you want, the way you make the most money here is you qualify for federal funding, and that's what they're doing. So anyway, that's just something else to be aware of. It's a big issue, and it's not going away. As a matter of fact, it's growing.
yeah,
The other things I wanted to just talk about before we get into the other topics, that's my shout out, is one thing on workforce housing.
Hmm.
Right. So there's there is constantly news on workforce housing, because it is such an important answer to the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis that we have in California, particularly. And that is Pasadena Unified has joined the many districts that are looking at it. And Pasadena Unified is doing an interesting thing. Pasadena Unified is basically taking a school building and converting it.
Hmm. Okay.
All right, and they had a big meeting. So Pasadena Unified. So Pasadena Unified is like other cities. Some cities have, West Contra Costa has multiple cities in one district. Pasadena has one city in one district, and Pasadena Unified is partnering with the city of Pasadena to do it.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. That's
So
what takes a partnership. It's got to be a partnership.
Right. So either you do it with your county, you do it part with the state, then you have to find financing and all these things that have to go along with it. But what you need is a recognition of the problem, and that these are solutions. And they talked about AB 2295, the bills that have made it possible to go ahead and do it. So Pasadena is the big one.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Okay, so now next, let us arrive at your conversation around county.
The county, yeah, as everybody knows, I'm on the Contra Costa County Board of Education, and I've been there now 3.5 years. And there's the topic keeps coming up of the superintendents of counties, and some are elected and some are appointed, much like school districts, where a school district will do a search and then the board makes the selection of who will be the superintendent. That's not the case in the majority of our counties in California. The majority of them are elected, just like the board, which it may sound great because the voters get to choose who is going to be in charge, and that's also great if you pick somebody who's great, who's competent and who knows and understands the relationship between the board and is responsive to their constituents. Okay, but the problem with that is that it's like it's almost unregulated position. If the person is elected, they basically don't have a boss. And they said, oh, well, the voters are the boss. Well, but they don't get evaluated. And if there's any problems, there's nobody to then bring them up and say, make changes, or they're not accountable to anybody. And you would think maybe the board, but many times the board is just a rubber stamp for these. And so there are 5 counties where the superintendent is appointed, and they are San Francisco, Santa Clara, Sacramento, Los Angeles, and San Diego. And we were just noting that those are often counties we look to for best practices, for high performance. And so it does make a difference. It can make a big difference. And so I think this is something that we really need to look at. And so, what are the problems? What possibly could go wrong with having an elected superintendent? And I think there's a lot. There's a lot that could go wrong. We have counties have to deal with the court schools and the juvenile halls and special ed. So the counties deal with the most vulnerable children in that county because a school district, if they don't have the resources or if a student has really special needs, they may be referred to and they get incarcerated. And so these are the most vulnerable kids who have the most challenges in life to deal with. And they need um, to be the priority, And we know the counties do a lot of other things. They do professional development, they have programs, they do a lot. This is true. They did partnership with the health department. They just do a lot of things. But they have these schools and these children who need to be a priority. And they usually don't have a lot of schools. The district I come from, West Contra Costa, had like over 50 schools and thousands of teachers. Well, Contra Costa County has a lot fewer schools, a small group. And so to support those teachers is really important. And it's not going to break the bank to really give them that support. And so sometimes you might have a superintendent who is not as skilled at those things. And so that is a problem. How do you get the best practices? How do you make a situation better for those students? And the other thing that happens, or what can go wrong, is a superintendent getting in the way of the board doing their job. When I was getting elected, kept hearing this thing, well, that's not within your purview, But there are things that are in my purview that I don't see, that are not being, allowed. The board is not being allowed to do their job. Oftentimes, the boards are certainly they do oversight for the charter schools, and that oversight has to be strong. And because of all the, they don't have a whole lot of regulation like the public schools do. So it's important to have strong oversight. Curriculum. We as a board are supposed to approve the curriculum. But again, it's just, oh, trust us, we'll do our job and we'll bring you the plan and you rubber stamp it. And that personally is not what I want to do as an elected on that board. And the big one is safety. That we are in charge of approving the safety plan. And I remember after Uvalde, I tried to establish a safety committee. And boy, that was just, really shut down. That we don't need it. And, what are you trying to do? And I got accused of all kinds of things. And I was trying to make sure our students are safe. That's what I was trying to do. But so those are the kinds of problems that can happen if there's no accountability.
And isn't there supposed to be, I remember a document that came out around collaboration.
Yes. So recently, within the last year, maybe.
Yeah.
The CSBA, portion of CSBA, that is the county board members.
Which no longer exists.
No longer exists. But they put out a publication called Shared Governance. So, I mean, to me, that's the ideal. Isn't that what, we want the board and the superintendent to work together for the betterment of the students.
And that was the expectation when this system was created, right? Obviously, there were decisions made at some point as to who gets elected and who gets appointed. And honestly, those decisions apparently were made county by county over the history of California, because some counties made different decisions, right? And it looks like it's the larger counties, or some of the larger counties, because there are other ones that are also large. But San Francisco is a city and county and have one school district. San Diego is the same. Los Angeles is the same. So they've all made this decision. And Santa Clara is also very large, right? So what we're talking about are large, but there are other large ones. Alameda hasn't made that decision, and other large ones have not. But it just seems that those were, historically, the people doing that were thinking that there was going to be shared governance, and that would be a successful model, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's just, it's too much of the whim of the superintendent. I remember one example I heard at a conference was that a superintendent said they wanted one board member to be part of the hiring when they do interviews. And I thought, oh, that's cool. That's great. You can have some input there on the people that you hire. Well, that superintendent left. A new superintendent came in and they told them about it. And that superintendent said, oh, no, we're not going to do that. So it just depends on what kind of culture do you want to have? What kind of, and who's the best fit to do that? So if it's an elected situation, and sometimes nobody runs for those positions, so they just
That's
get
another whole thing.
like somebody who was in it says, oh, why don't you do it, and then they just kind of spit them right
Well,
in.
it has, not everybody can run for it. In other words, to run for school board, you have to be a certain age. I mean, that's basically the qualification, is your age, right? To run for superintendent, you have to have an actual administrator's credential.
Yes, yes,
That's the big difference.
yes, absolutely. So principals, the career path, maybe principals, and then the principals go to the district office, and district office, they become an assistant superintendent, etc., and maybe even a superintendent. And then they go to a county level. I've seen that career path many times. And so, but it doesn't have to always that way, especially if, like I said, nobody runs. Somebody who was a superintendent of the juvenile hall, or they could easily just slide right in there, who does not
Right.
have wide breadth of experience, could just fit in there and um, you know just not have the insight for shared governance, or whatever. It's too, I don't know, it's just too loosey goosey. And we need more accountability for that.
Yeah, that's the thing. So as you look at it, it's not, in order to make any kind of change, you'd have to have a countywide vote, basically a referendum to change how a position is held, and take away the ability to elect, and change it to be appointed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So there, sure, it could take a state law, but also by county. But I guess the general public sees it as, oh, you're taking away my opportunities to vote for somebody, and that's one person less that I'm voting for, and they might see that as, taking away power from constituents, to then determine that. But oh,
Right.
like I said,
So it's a complicated thing. I mean, maybe part of it is that there has to be a way for the um, board members. So if the board members are an effective team together, they can hold their own meetings and make some decisions. What happens is sometimes boards are not as effective as you wish they would be, so they're not in agreement on what the board should do versus what the superintendent should do. And when you're talking about shared governance, if somebody doesn't want to share, and the person the other side says that's fine, that's
Right.
what happens.
Right, and we've got a experience with that in West Contra Costa because of our community schools
Right.
situation. And so that is an example of shared governance. And it's not smooth. It's not smooth going. It's hard because people are not used to it, but it is so important and really the best thing for students. And so I think, maybe I was just thinking about how sometimes on school boards, there are school board members who can censure other board members. That's, for instance,
Right.
maybe call for them to step down or to, maybe they don't come to meetings. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happen that in that direction. If you're going to maintain elected superintendents, then that has to be available to the board.
Right.
Like,
And that's, yeah.
yeah. So there needs to be a way that we as a board can say, hey, our superintendent needs to do better. And so let's look at how we can do that. So we need to have that kind of possibility. So if we're going to maintain it as an elected position, there's just got to be a way to share that accountability, shared governance, shared accountability.
Yeah, and just a better format for best practices,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I think maybe part of it needs to be that what would be helpful for superintendents is for them to understand that they're going to have some board members that are going to want to be board members are engaged differently in their job. Some have more time, different backgrounds and experience, and you can account for that.
That's true. No, that is very true. Some just want to show up and then don't want to do anything more than that. And then some of us are really involved in our home districts and involved in the county and want to
Right.
see the working together of those two institutions. So yeah, and that's got to be taken into account as well. Um, and then the public needs to know at every level, what are we all doing, what are we about, what are we passionate about, what are we accomplishing. I mean, you want to know that of all your elected.
Exactly.
Be done.
And the shared, I'm looking at it now, the shared governance initiative was from 2022. What it basically came forward with was best practices that you can measure your board and your superintendent's relationship against, right? You could say, do we do this? Do we not do this? And that's something, probably that is the most doable thing, right? That could come out of a board retreat or something.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, but I remember when I first started, I wanted to do at a retreat for us to look at our values, and then come to some shared values, and then create our mission statement, etc. from those values. I also wanted to have the mission statement of the board and the superintendent to be the same. Why would you have separate ones?
Yeah, that's
So it got to just a certain point, and then there was no support for it, and it just died. But that's that's a good goal to achieve, really. What are our shared goals so that we can govern in a shared way? But some people don't have those values, and that's what it's about. What do you value? What are your values?
Right.
When
and so I think this is something for voters to pay attention to, right? And it's hard to know everything about everybody who's running, but that's one of the things that you really want to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing we're going to talk a little bit about was showing up, right?
Oh, yes, yes. Board members are elected, and in the county office, you have a lot of meet committees, and also you meet for IDTs, which are interdistrict transfers. And so a parent will come and they bring their child and they want to transfer from one.
Very serious thing. It's an incredibly serious thing.
Really serious, and it's not easy. And you're there, and there's this dais, and we got lawyers, and we've got all kinds of people up here, and you're coming before them with your child and your passion about their education. And then if a board member or two or so are not showing up, you don't have a quorum, that's a problem. And that's a big issue. And it happens consistently. It's not good. It's not good. So those are things that also about governance and things that the constituents should know. They should know this about those things. And expulsion hearings, oh my goodness, those are really important to show up. And I think that's the biggest, that's the minimum you can do, is at least show up. And that includes the superintendent. Superintendent needs to show up when there's problems that the student or the teachers come and they want to talk negotiations or whatever. You need to really show up and be there and not avoid or hide or, but
Or be the reason for a delay, because that's
delay,
what
it's
happened.
delay tactic. And you can always send somebody else, and business can be conducted.
You
There's
can delegate. Yeah.
You can delegate it. So again, show up, showing up, be prepared, and do your job. So that's all we want to do. And I know some people don't, but that's fine. That's their choice. But at least, at the minimum, we all need to know this and really think closely about, is this the best way to have our county superintendents govern? And what changes can we make to make it better?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And at the very least, how we can really implement all the good research that was done in the shared governance initiative.
yeah.
Right. Because what that initiative was about was the counties that have been successful and made it work and are proud that they have shared governance. And they're just talking about how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of where we are in the county. And come to our meetings and check them out. We're online and they get recorded, and you can go and, we don't have many people come to the county meetings, but you can watch them on Zoom and, decide for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And they are right now in the throes of some labor disputes, right? Which is another
Yes.
really important issue. And it's also very time sensitive, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where your employees don't have any choice but to vote to strike, because you're not advancing the conversation.
Yeah. You're not showing up to talk to them. So the last 3 to 3 meetings, the teachers have come, the unions have come, and not just the union from the county, but districts within the county have come as a coalition, which is
Yeah.
wonderful to see. And they are, fighting for a livable wage. And these teachers, oh my gosh, the students that they work with, and they love their job. Some of them have been there for decades. They wouldn't want any other job. Come on, let's show we value them. Yes, we do Teacher of the Year, and we spend $50,000 on that every year. But let's value their work, every one of them, by giving them the resources that they need and the support they need and the salary they need. So that's kind of my perspective. That.
Well, there we are for this week. We have one last thing, and that is a shout out. And that is to someone we've given a shout out to in the past, but he deserves it again. And that is Senator Anthony Portantino. And Senator Portantino has been an advocate for the arts, a big advocate for the arts, and supporting all the bills that basically fund arts education, and a lot of the details around it. There was an update I did want to give. We had talked about a a bill that had been put forward around CTE teachers and teachers not needing to have to bring in arts education specialists to become classroom teachers without having to go through training to be a teacher. And that got dropped. That's gone, which I think maybe Mr. Portantino helped to drop, because it didn't make sense, because that was where you were bringing in a CTE teacher is a career technical teacher who is very appropriately part of a secondary curriculum where older students are able to just learn a career. So you can learn the career, you can learn dance, you can learn music, you can learn any of the arts. But the fact that you are an experienced musician or dancer doesn't necessarily make you the best second grade teacher, because you've had absolutely no training whatsoever. And there was a thought that they should go forward and waive that kind of training and give them a credential as a K-12 teacher. But that's gone.
Yeah, thank goodness.
That's gone. Right. And I was, it was an idea. They just needed to hear all the different sides, and all the arts education people wrote to them and explained why it wasn't a good idea. Right.
Yeah.
It seems like a good idea, but it's not. Anyway, the California music educators, the California arts educators, the California dance educators, and the California theater educators gathered on Tuesday, April 30th at lunch to present an award to Senator Portantino for his incredible advocacy for arts education in California. So this is our shout out to
Yes, a real public education champion, for sure.
Exactly. So he's getting it from us here at Between Two Teachers as well. And so we will end on that happy note, and see you again next time on Between Two Teachers.